But hello, thank you for coming. I think, what is this, the last one of the day? Yeah, so I'm keeping you between you and like maybe TV or something something more fun. So anyway, but thank you for coming to this presentation. My name is Gabby Murza. I work with Utah State University Extension. Um, and if you're not familiar with what Extension is, we are part of USU. We're kind of the health, not the health edu, but like kind of the public education, community level education arm of the university. So university does research and teaching, and then they, as a land grant university, they also have extension as one of the three things that this university does. I work primarily in Utah County. My office is in Orem. It's not actually at the USU campus. It's a different office. And so the programming that I do, community level programming, that helps people kind of address different health and wellness needs. I work with the Heart Initiative, very long acronym, but basically I am one of 5 faculty around the state that helps address opioid overdose prevention. So the programs that I teach to community residents within Utah County and actually around the state, I kind of travel around, focus on injury prevention, chronic pain management, resiliency development, stigma reduction, those kinds of things that address opioid overdose prevention, and also those related risks and harms and challenges that people experience with that. So, so that's what I do. That is just me in a nutshell. So this is kind of what we're going to talk about today. We have, I know that everybody here probably knows what stress is. Does anybody not know what stress is? Everyone knows what stress is, right? We get stressed out, we feel it, we understand it. But I wanted to make sure that we all at least were kind of starting off with the foundation and understanding what the differences between a stress and a stressor, what makes them different. Why does our body respond the way it does? What causes these things that happen? Why am I always stressed out? Those kinds of things. Learning how stress impacts our health. Oh, thank you. Yep. And then we're going to do an activity. So I wanted to say before we start, I'm really excited. I am excited to do this topic. This is something like stress management, that I do talk about and I present on. So I am excited to be here, but I also kind of giggled when Ellen, when you asked me to present on this, because if you knew me, and you guys don't, but if you knew me and you saw what was going on in my brain, you're like, this person is the worst person to talk about stress management, because my spirit animal is a hummingbird. Okay. So if you can imagine a hummingbird and equate it to my brain and what happens in my head, there you go. Hi. Okay. But that also hopefully means that you're like, okay, well, maybe this person knows what she's talking about. I hope you guys know. So please don't leave. But that's basically me in a nutshell. That is my spirit animal. It's my Patronus. That's my thing, and I've lived with it. So when we go through this presentation, I don't really focus on meditation and mindfulness, deep breathing, relaxation, those kinds of things, because we kind of know those, right? There are YouTube videos. There's a lot of resources that focus on those kinds of stress management techniques. So I'm going to be showing you a different way to manage stress. And not so much managing as much as actually being able to address it. So you can kind of think of it more of it like maybe a practical way of being able to come to terms, like being able to understand your stress or your stressor, how your body responds, and then finding ways to address those using those stress management techniques that we've been able to find online that are available. Okay. Hey. Oh, no. Yeah, no, that's okay. Okay, so I wanted to start off with a video, couple minutes, and then we will continue.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
Oop. Okay. All right. So there was a lot of information in there. And it's a couple of years old, but it still holds up as far as like the research that has been done and kind of what's been found and things like that. So I really found that interesting because it tells you a couple of things. Is you know, it's not all bad, right? We all get stressed out. It is a normal part of life. It does happen. And at least from the study, obviously we're not rats, but at least from the study, what they found, that even if you grow up or live in a house where the people around you have poor stress management skills, or you grew up kind of being stressed and anxious, those effects can be reversed. And those resiliency skills can be learned and kind of, like I said, reversed, right? So there is hope. That video, obviously a lot of it was talking about kind of the negatives and what can happen. But there's also positives to it. So I just really liked that video, the way that it kind of showed everything. Oh, there we go. Okay. So stress versus stressor. All right, a stressor is anything that causes stress. All right, stress is a response. A stressor is something that causes that response. We have internal stressors and external. So internal stressors can be our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, things that we feel or think about in our minds, and that cause us to be stressed. Okay. External would be like environmental things, right? So those are the things that they're easier to figure out. You're stuck behind someone in traffic, or your environmental things, maybe household situations or relationship situations. These are those external things that happen that cause stress, or that cause that response. When we go through the activity, we're going to talk about 3 different types of stressors. We have our major life event, our chronic strain, and a daily hassle. A major life event has a very clear onset. So it could be something like getting a new job, losing a job, getting married, getting a divorce, having an injury or an illness, moving, right? Or someone in your house is moving. Maybe your kids or your grandkids are moving or something. So that is a major life event, very clear onset, something that has happened. A chronic strain could be something that is kind of a daily strain that is different from a hassle, though. So a chronic strain would be something like maybe you're a caregiver and you're caring for someone in your family or in your household. It could be arguments, right? It could be like, sometimes arguments can be a daily hassle, where sometimes you might argue with your significant other or your kids or whatever. You might be arguing once in a while, but if you live in a household, or people live in a household where arguments are just every day kind of a thing, for them it could be a chronic strain. And then a daily hassle would be like a commute to work. For others, that might be a chronic strain for others too. But really a daily hassle would be like, man, I'm catching every single red light on the way to work, right? Or I'm stuck behind this really slow person. Or I, got to the store and I forgot the one thing that I went there. Something like that. That could be a hassle, right? So it's not a make or break situation, but it is something that still can stress us out and give us anxiety. When we talk about stressors, and we talk about the types of stressors and the way our body responds, it is our perception, right? So like I said, arguments for some people can be sporadic and it's more of a hassle. Like, man, we just argue about dinner. We can never figure out what to have for dinner. But for other people, it might be every day. Like, I have a teenager and it's like just turn into the worst person ever. And we just argue all the time. And that could be a chronic strain, because that, for some people. So it really is our perception, how we perceive that stressor. Stress, I put 2 different definitions up here, because the first one, I wanted to show you kind of the difference in how different organizations frame what stress is. The first one is from the World Health Organization, and they define stress as a state of worry or mental tension caused by an anticipated threat. That sounds so bad. And it just screams negativity, right? So it's like, we know that stress is bad. We try to avoid stress in our lives. We try to avoid anxiety. And so I just kind of found this interesting that this is still out there, because that's what it's basically saying, is that there could be a threat. And this is how our body is responding to this kind of threat or this bad thing in our lives. Whereas the American Psychological Association and some other disciplines define it a little more neutrally, as a normal reaction to everyday pressure. And I think over the last 10, 15 years, as more research has come out about stress and anxiety, and it's about, kind of talking about stress management techniques and how to build resiliency skills, that definition, that second definition, is kind of lends to that, lends credibility to the fact that stress just happens. It is in our lives. It does happen. Our body responds to it in the way it does. Our brain responds to it in the way it does. But there's no way to, to totally get rid of stress. It's just an everyday pressure. And it's our body's normal reaction to that everyday pressure. Okay. So I want you to keep kind of that in mind. Being able to think about that, like, I am stressed. This happens, I know. And again, you might be that hummingbird in your brain where you're like, I'm freaking out right now. But just remember, though, that it does happen and it's kind of normal, right? There are two types of stress we can have, is eustress and distress. Eustress is stress that our body perceives as something positive, okay? Eustress could be a marriage, it could be a promotion, it could be a move,
Right.
it could be an achievement, something like that, okay? So, and then distress, on the other hand, is something that our body perceives as negative, okay? So it could be losing a job or losing your house, or maybe get, maybe for some people it could be marriage. Maybe marriage is distress, kind of that distress. So again, it is our perception and what we perceive that stress to be. And for some people, something that's positive for someone might not be that positive for somebody else. But generally, that's kind of how you separate the two. The other difference is that eustress tends to give us energy and motivates us to do something positive, okay? Whereas distress might sap our energy and kind of make us retreat. We would want to retreat from a situation, okay? We also have acute versus chronic. So, acute would be something that has a very clear onset and it's short. So for example, if you're driving to work and the person in front of you slams on their brakes and you have to slam on yours, that is an acute stressor, okay? Very clear onset, very short. You're gonna, have the rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, all those things, but your body's gonna kind of relax. And then chronic is something that we just have been dealing with over for a while now. And so that's what stress management really focuses on, are the chronic stressors, those things that just happen over and over again for a long period of time. So like work stressors and things like that. Okay. Any questions so far about that? Okay. All right. So how does stress impact health? We're going to go through this a little bit quickly so you guys have time to do the activity. All right. There is a link between depression and our immune system or our immune activity. There are trials, there have been studies, and there are studies going on to determine if there's anti-inflammatory medication that can help with this, that can help kind of dampen that and boost our immune system, because they show that stress, especially with the flood of cortisol in our brains, and how it impacts like the physiological response, the rapid heart rate, breathing, sweaty palms, those kinds of things. Maybe there's medications, anti-inflammatory meds, maybe, like ibuprofen or something like that, that can help with that. Also, and the other thing was, you might have seen articles that there are foods that are promoted to help with improving your immune system. So like, foods with antioxidants like blueberries, or maybe with vitamin C, or, like citrus or things like that, right? So there are foods that can help us. They're looking at medications as well. We have genetics, personality, our social factors can play a role in how someone is affected by stress. And this one, especially personality, what I generally tell people is Sometimes we assume that if someone is super calm, super chill, that they probably never get stressed or that they just aren't affected by stress versus someone maybe in a high ranking position, maybe they're in the military, maybe they're an airline pilot, you know, these highly stressful jobs. We assume that these highly stressful jobs that they gotta, you know, they might maybe have a lot of stress, so they're always stressed out. And that's not always the case. So personality is actually not as obvious. You know, our personality is not as obvious sometimes. And it has to do with, it could have to do with genetics, right? It could have to do with our upbringing. It could have to do with a person's resiliency, kind of those strategies they've learned and they implement. So those are all things that can you know, be taken into account. All right, long-term stress can impact all of these things in our lives, right? Our digestion, our memory. You know, how many of us have had kind of when we've been anxious, rumbly tumblies, right? Have we had like stomach aches? Anybody? Where you're like, man, my stomach kind of hurts. I can't really eat anything, or I don't feel well. Why am I going to the bathroom so much, right? So feeling stressed out, feeling anxious about something can impact our digestion, and even, you know, cause us to have poor sleep, heart issues or cardiovascular issues, maybe even our memory. Man, I am so forgetful. You know, maybe something stressful, you're thinking about something, or something happened and your mind's on that and you're like, I am so forgetful. I forgot to do XYZ, right? Or I forgot about this deadline or something like that. So stress, long-term stress can impact all of those things. But internal resources, so things like stress management techniques and resiliency strategies, and social support can positively buffer against the impact of stress on our mental health. Studies have been done for a really long time about different resiliency skills on different professions. So like nursing, social work, really those kinds of helping professions. And they found that connection and relationships were, if not the most important, they were one of the most important buffer in helping someone be able to manage stress in a positive way and being able to react to a stressful situation in a positive way. So having those supports. And then of course, like I said, those internal things. So our abilities that our internal kind of our abilities to manage. Okay. And then lastly, coping strategies or those resiliency skills and our self-esteem. So our confidence in ourselves and our confidence in how we feel, how confident we feel in being able to manage that stress, can also positively impact our mental health, or how stress affects our mental and our physical health too, as well. Okay. Any questions? Anything on the chat? Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so how do you know you're stressed? Let's start with physical. All right, when you are stressed out, what are some physical signs that you know you're stressed out? You could just yell it out. Headaches. Tense muscles, yeah. Lower tolerance rate of just like things that I could normally handle. Okay, perfect. So lower tolerance. Exhausted. Yep. Yeah. So our body physically responds to stress in different ways. So all of the ways you guys named, and then also including rapid heart rate or rapid breathing, maybe sweating, upset stomach, those kinds of things. Okay. What about cognitively or behaviorally? How do you respond cognitively or behaviorally? What do you guys do? Like you said, like the tolerance, yeah. Kind of that lower tolerance to be able to handle stuff. Anybody else? Teary. I'm sorry? Crying. Yeah, crying, teary, yeah, yep. It could, yeah. Yeah, some of these you'll see the examples, they can bounce around a little bit. It's not, you know, super clear delineations, but yeah, that would be like memory. memory loss or like issues with remembering things. Okay.
So irritable online.
Irritable, yep, yeah.
I also feel like maybe my mind's kind of cloudy or not as sharp as normal.
Yeah, you kind of feel that little fogginess, like, yeah. Okay. Yep. Just shut down. Don't care, not dealing with it. Yep. So things like worrying, concentration, poor judgment, pessimism. So these are just some of the examples to add to what you guys, everybody said. What about emotionally? Like I said, some of the things that you named earlier could fall into this as well, but what about emotionally? Yeah, like kind of extremes, like overly responsive or like overly sensitive to something. Yeah.
That's overwhelmed or shutting down.
Overwhelmed or shutting down. Yep.
There's a social one, but
There is actually.
distance. Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I was thinking emotionally, but where you just want to distance yourself.
Yeah, that actually, yeah, it is here, but also social wise. Yeah. It does, like I said, they kind of overlap, but these are just some examples. But feeling overwhelmed, run down, irritable, maybe doubting yourself, withdrawing from with others. And then social, the last way. What about socially?
Inappropriate responses to people.
Inappropriate responses. Yeah. That could be one. Yes. Anybody else? Mhm. Yeah, so taxed out socially a little bit faster. Someone in the last presentation listed that one as well. Is just feeling a little overwhelmed by being around too many people. Maybe you just need to retreat, kind of.
I think for me, if it's a person that's causing it, I might feel more threatened or like feel more like they're an enemy than normal.
Okay.
And then I think sometimes if there's someone else, I kind of want to reach out to for help. So there's kind of two different, depending on their involvement with the stressor, I feel like it can either I'm reaching out, like clinging on to please help me get out of this versus I want to get as far away from you as I can.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, yeah, exactly. Kind of feeling someone might be a threat versus, someone who would be more supportive. And you're the first person to mention something kind of the positive way, because that's something to think about. Any of these could be, you could think of something positive. And I didn't put them in here and I realized I did not. That was my oopsie. But, physical wise, when you're stressed physically, maybe you're the type of person who like needs to go for a run, so you're like, just need to get out your anxiety and just do something physical, right? Versus cognitively or behaviorally, maybe you're just, when you're anxious or you're stressed out, maybe that's like your focus time and you can focus on something and get it done, right? Emotionally, maybe there's positive emotions that are kind of linked to that. And for socially, maybe there's people who you reach out to provide that emotional support, and also, to find that social, kind of that social interaction. So I realized I need to put some positive ones in there because there are some positive ones. And I didn't ask you guys to name kind of those things. But social wise, again, isolation, feeling resentment or lonely, lashing out, or maybe being nagging to other people. Like you're anxious, so now you're kind of bossing people around. Those are all kinds of things. But again, it could be the flip side. Maybe there's people who you reach out to. No, thank you for saying that, because that was a big light bulb in my head. Okay. So what are some ways that you respond to stress when you feel stressed out? What do you guys do? Yeah.
Something I've noticed I do is I will laugh. I'll try and find something funny about the situation and laugh about it.
Okay. Nice. Finding something funny. Laughing about it. Anybody else? Yeah.
Element chill playlist, like it just calms me down in like all of the areas. So yeah, and it's a random mix of music. They're not all like, I have rock songs as well as like classical music on there. So they're just like songs that like pull me out of the moment. So I have I call it my chill playlist.
Nice.
Like, I need to chill.
So having a playlist, kind of having music, doesn't have to be all relaxing, but kind of a like a mix of different types of music that pulls you out. Cool. Okay. And then did you have one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, so I like just any type of creating, just to kind of mindlessly put my mind somewhere else, I guess. And then I can go back and have a more clear perspective.
Yeah. So doing something artistic, something you can focus on, and then later on come back to that. Okay. Yes.
I just leave the environment. That's
So just leave. Yeah. So leaving the environment, leaving the situation, doing something physical, and then you're able to, yeah, get back to it. Okay. Do we have anything online? Yeah. Yeah. And there is research that shows a lot of research, obviously, for anything, any of these work. Had somebody in the last presentation, one person said they listened to really quiet, calming music, and the other one's like, I listen to loud music and like, rock music or something. So there's research showing that all of these things work. Positive strategies like these things that work for us, or these things that we use do work and help us. And especially, kind of mixing in some physical activity, mixing in that distraction. Distraction is good temporarily up to a certain point. You don't want to distract yourself or ignore it. That's kind of the cutoff. If you're ignoring it over the long term, that's where it can start, kind of becoming a worse issue because you're not addressing it. But taking a break from it for a couple of minutes or even a couple of days, that is okay. And that's been shown to be really positive for some people to do that. Okay. All right, so now we get to do this activity. For those who are joining online, you can do this on a piece of paper. And for those of you here, you're going to get a kind of a worksheet that you can work off of. For those who are online, I'll show you on the slides what everybody's doing here in the room. And you can do this on a piece of paper. Okay. Like I said, we have a lot of resources for the kind of typical, the stress management techniques that we know about. So this is more of a practical kind of a thing. This is also something that I use with adults and youth in being able to understand and name their stressor. I want you to name your stressors and figure out what you have control over, and then utilize those strategies. And so it's kind of a more practical way, and it's kind of like it's a little more practical way of doing that. So we're going to go through it. So on your piece of paper, I want you to list any stressor or demand that you've had in the past week. You can list 1 or 2 or 3, however many you'd like to do. And we're going to go through this a little bit quickly because we have like 11 minutes left. So, so maybe for this one, you can name like 1 or 2, but anything just this past week, something that was a stressor or a demand that you experienced. Okay. When you have that, next to it, for those of you online, you're going to write this next to it. For those of you here, you just X mark, check the right box. But you're going to label each stressor as a major life event, a chronic strain, or a daily hassle. And remember, examples of a major life event are something with a sudden onset. It's obvious. So like a death or a change in employment or a relationship change, or an illness or injury that you've experienced. You have chronic strain. Strains could be a living situation or your daily commute or chronic pain, or maybe you're a caregiver, so you have a daily caregiving responsibility. And then a daily hassle would be something like maybe a disagreement once in a while. I'm not talking about like daily arguments, okay? But more like a disagreement or these inconveniences that you have. Maybe there's an accident on the road or like traffic is just terrible, those kinds of things, okay? So I want you to label each stressor as a life event, a major life event, chronic strain, or a daily hassle. And this is yours. Again, this is our perception of a stressor. Now we're going to assign control. So for those of you here, you have a box that says control 1 through 5. And those of you online, I want you to estimate the degree of control you have over each stressor. So next to each stressor, I want you to put either a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5. 1 means you have absolutely no control over it. A 2 is you have a little bit of control. 3 might be neutral. Like you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. 4 is you have more control, a little more control over it. And a 5 means that you have a lot of control, okay? And depending on your personality, maybe you're like, I have control over everything. Or I have no control over nothing in my life. But I want you to be really honest with yourself and label, how much control, what degree of control do you have over these stressors that you listed. When you've put the number down, I want you to focus on or circle every stressor that is marked a 4 or a 5. And I want you to underline, or you could even cross out anything that you marked a 1 or a 2. These 4s and 5s, the things that you feel, that you perceive you have more control over, I want you to focus on these. These are ones that you're going to focus on and use those stress management techniques. Anything you marked a 1 or a 2, I want you to develop a strategy for kind of letting go. Now, we're not saying ignore them completely. It's more of a temporary thing. There's not a whole lot of control you have for these specific stressors. So I want you to not focus on them right now. Okay. And maybe you don't have control over them right now at this moment. Maybe you just don't have the resources or the knowledge or the supports to be able to manage these 1s and 2s. So it's not a permanent letting go. It is more of a temporarily, until I figure stuff out, until I know more about the situation, or until I have more resources, okay? But the things that are 4 or 5, these are those that you're going to tackle, that you're going to work on tackling right now. Okay. So the reason, again, like I wanted you all to do this activity is because sometimes, especially if we have one of those weeks where it just seems like everything is going wrong, it's sometimes really helpful to be able to write things down and see them, like actually see them, think about those stressors and think about, what do I have control over? What do I not have control over? And then those 4s and 5s, for those of you who are out or online, those 4s and 5s, you're going to list out like come up with things that you can do to address those. For those of you here in the class, there is a box next to it that says, what can I do, or what I can do to manage these. And there are things on the back, and we'll get to the next slide, of some ways to manage those stressors. And one of those, a couple of those ways is seeking support. And there are different types of support. And we're going to go through these kind of, again, a little bit quickly. But there are different types of support. You have emotional support. So sometimes we think of support like somebody we need to have, we have that person we can talk to or confide in, but there are all types of supports. Okay, there's a lot of different types of support. So we have emotional support. Emotional support provides a feeling of being cared about and feelings of belonging. This could be somebody who you can confide in, somebody who you trust, a spouse, child, grandchild, a significant other, a pastor, a friend, somebody who you can confide in, right? And being able and know that they can be, and know that they will listen and they will provide support for you, even if it's like tough love kind of support. They could do that. You have informational support. Informational support provides knowledge and skills to help you learn ways to manage something or to address that stressor. So, like, finding a YouTube video, taking a workshop, finding an article online, that obviously, things that provide that information. Okay. Tangible support is practical support that helps you manage something. So it could be you have a deadline, somebody helps you reach a deadline. Maybe somebody covers a shift for you at work. Maybe somebody helps you get groceries or cooks for you, or things like that. It's tangible. It's that practical type of support. Okay, that provides somebody or something that can provide a service for you. You have affirmational support. This provides a sense of accomplishment and a sense of purpose in your life. So these are things like maybe you're recognized at work for something you did. Maybe, a party or a certificate or just a good job, acknowledgement, something like that. Those are examples of affirmational support. And then the last is belonging support. Okay. This one is found to be really important for youth. So if you're familiar with the 4-H Youth Development Program, or like Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, FFA, belonging support is something that's essential definitely for 4-H, and I think for other youth development programs, being able to help people feel like they belong. And this helps provide a sense of connection to a community or to a family or to a just something, helps them feel like, helps a person feel like they belong in their church or in their school, or they feel like they belong in their family, they belong with their group of friends. And so even if they're not physically if they're not physically able to be with those groups, they know that they still have a place there and that they belong. Okay, so it is important also for youth, but also, obviously, of course, for adults as well. So there are all types of support that you can reach out to, and you can find what works for you. And sometimes you need one versus, over another. Sometimes you need information versus talking to someone, things like that. Sometimes you need a tangible service, tangible support. So just depends.
Question on Zoom.
Yeah.
If there's a way for them to get that
Yeah.
I can put our website.
Perfect. Okay. So I will send it to Ellen and she will post it on the website when they put up the videos, the recordings, yeah. So with the recordings. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks. Any questions about anything we talked about? So I wanted to end with that. And I wanted to thank you for being here, for toughing it out with me, and going through this. I hope that worksheet is helpful. It's something that you can use even in your mind every day when you're like, man, this is really bothering me. Do this. Assign a level of control. Figure out maybe something that you can do to address it if it's like a 4 or a 5 versus a 1 or a 2. You could do this every week. You could do this every day, however you would like. If you want to connect with me or the Heart Initiative, we're on all of the cool social media handles. Twitter's not that cool anymore, but it's, we're still there. So, but you can find videos on on YouTube as well.